vlog number 4. I'm going to be talking about the teaching when the world is on fire. Some of the readings that we were assigned to discuss. Before I get started, I want to address that this was kind of the main focus of this 3 readings were mostly impacts of tragic circumstances on students and as well as the teachers. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with Pedro Noguera. In his reading, his piece of Cops or Counselors, responding to the threat of school shooting with care rather than fear, Pedro focused on the steps America has taken or lack thereof in regard to subdue the continuous tragic mass shootings that occurred throughout the country. He looked at the differences between mass shooting or mass shooters um, and the counterpart, which is the interpersonal violence involving guns. He mentioned that with mass shootings, mostly those people have more weapons than they should. So 2 to 3 weapons, and mostly semi-automatic or automatic weapons. Um, and they also want to be seen by everyone. They want everyone to know what they've done. Hence why some of them always either go live or try to have something online where everyone can view their tragic events that they're carrying out. Whereas those that have just violence involving guns, which is mostly common in the urban parts of the U.S., is they want to hide what they've done, and the guns that they have is usually a handgun that is obtained illegally. Um, Noguera suggested that the mass shooting problem be approached or treated like the Ebola pandemic, which was contained due to the trust in education. Due to trust in education within the community or across the world, he used that as an example of how the pandemic was contained because we trusted doctors and doctors trusted the communities and educated people on how they can help curb the spread of the virus. He elaborated on this idea with snippets of the studies that he conducted of middle school students in Oakland area where violence and fights kind of rolled the schools. He noted that although there's no guarantee with these approach or this particular approach of trust in education, however, we need to recognize that there are other alternatives to ensuring the safety of students in schools other than arming teachers, which in turn increases the presence of guns in school, which is something we don't really want. Like if we're trying to ensure the safety of students, we shouldn't be having more guns or more personnel with guns in schools, as an excuse, using that as an excuse to somehow combat mass shooters. Um, and the next author would be Jeff Collier. Jeff Collier, I think I'm saying it right, is in his piece on how Hurricane Harvey altered my perspective as a teacher. He shared his new perspective as a teacher after his tragic experience with Hurricane Harvey, which occurred back in, I want to say, 2017. Um, Although it didn't really affect me per se, but it did happen in Texas, where he was both a student and a teacher. He was a teacher for a ninth grade band and a student as a doctorate student at the University of Houston. So his experience, he mentioned how his state of mind altered during and post the tragedy as a student because um, he reflected on how he barely made it through his studies, um, given that he was experiencing um, this hurricane, how he wasn't able to focus in classes, and he kind of related it back to what his students may or may not be going through, the things that we know and things that we don't know that the students are going through, and he wanted to he credited the tragic event for his new perspective on how to better serve his students, because they too themselves are facing known and unknown circumstances at home that could deter them from um, participating in school, um, and noting that being a support system for students is one of the best act a teacher can ever produce. That is giving students the gift of grace, working with students, understanding where they're coming from, taking their tragic events and um, I guess life circumstances into consideration when we're, I guess, judging them on why they're not able to perform um, better in school. And then the last reading on this list would be with Mr. Frederick Scott Sayers in his "I Was Raised to Believe Education could keep me safe." He discussed his concerns about the lives of the students he teaches and counsels each day. He started with one of the students that he worries about the most. He noted that the student does feel some type of guilt that because he was the only one in his group of friends who made it, that is being alive or somewhat safe, because it's like almost like death is, or violence, death by violence is one of the main, I guess, take of how the students and his friends would kind of face life, fighting and having to, I guess, die from trying to survive, basically. So he does mention that the student feels guilty, and he himself fears that the students will one day um, fall victim to police brutality or even dead by the police, because of how things are going with the shootings of a student who was, I think his name was Edwards, in back in 2016, where he was killed or murdered by a police officer, even though he uh, was a good student and whatnot. Like, he kind of made a reference of, despite being a good student, he still died from um, police um, violence. So regardless of what I guess black students or black boys do with education, within education or in their lives in general, there's a possibility of them being taken out by those who are supposed to serve them, which is mostly the police system. Um, Sayers hopes that using education to connect or get through his students will help them survive, but he also feels guilty having to teach them about resistance of power, self awareness, etc., while also policing them as an administrator in school. Um, Even though he's helping the students, he also feels guilty to have to um, tell them what not to do and how to, yes, keep themselves away from violence and whatnot. Well, that's all I have for this readings. Yes, there are impacts of tragic circumstances that can affect both teachers and students, but these are like a little bit of insights of how we can better serve our students in the classrooms. Like with Jeff Collier's piece, where he said providing students with support is all we can do, or that is the best that we can do, to always talk to our students about their circumstances and whatnot. Also signing off with Sayers, yes, even though he doesn't really have um, high hopes for the future of what can possibly happen to the students due to the current events and proven mass shootings and death by police officers for the students, he does hope that education and providing support for the students will eventually help them out. That's all I have for today. Thank you. I'll see you on the next vlog. Thank you. Bye.